we're just grasping at speculation. But sometimes, I mean, I'll always try to ask myself, like, what is this thing doing? Or what does it look like it's doing? And sometimes I can come up with a theory, and sometimes I just can't easily come up with one.
Oh, of course. Like, what's the purpose? I always ask that on any case I hear. What are they doing there? What is the
Right.
purpose of that event? Like,
Exactly.
why go to that body of water, put on that demonstration? Like, what are they doing? You know what I was thinking about earlier when you said the one case about the boxer police officer guy who was
Yeah.
out on the Lake Erie, and the water was, let's get into this, sucking up into this crap. And just hit me. How do we know that they're sucking up water and not putting water in?
That's a good question. Well, I don't really know, except that, all I can go on are witness accounts where they will say it looked like it was sucking up the water. And that's really about all you can say.
Sure.
In this first volume, I do include a couple of those cases. One was from India in 1967. And I had a great illustrator for this collection, Alan Levine. He's a dear friend of mine now.
Nice.
And Alan did an illustration of that particular event. And I think, I think he did it fairly accurately. I was very nitpicky with a lot of them. I really wanted them to be accurate. And I think he did this very accurately. But it was a case reported in Indian newspapers for multiple days. This was an ongoing thing in the northeastern part of India. It's kind of like a backwater part of India. It's getting near, I guess, what was once called Burma, so Myanmar. Okay. Anyway, in that area, or near Bangladesh as well. So you had a bunch of villagers, village people saying that this object comes into the area, and it actually caused some damage to some of the woodland area. It might have hit a tree. That seems to be the implication. And it was seen over this little stream. Classic disc-shaped UFO, flying saucer, sucking up the water out of this stream. So, what are they doing? Like, there's a lot of those. And in fact, I didn't even include every one of the accounts of the object sucking up water, because, I mean, when I asked myself, is that technically a USO? And you could argue against that, but I thought they're so interesting. I wanted to include
definitely
some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them.
How many cases do you think there are of that? I mean, if you were to put a percentage on what you included in your book, I don't know, 5%, 2%, or I don't even know.
Oh, of the sucking up the water?
Yeah.
A slow percentage that I included. Okay. Probably less than 5% of the cases.
But there's even more cases you didn't include.
Yes, that's right.
About that. Okay,
that's exactly true. Yeah, so there were a lot of cases I left out, and I'm sure there were lots of genuine USO cases that I left out just because they were too threadbare and I couldn't really do much with them.
Sure.
I didn't want to make a complete compendium of all of them. What I wanted to do was take the best cases where there's some meat on the bones, and to try to breathe life into them. Honestly, I didn't start out by wanting to do a statistical breakdown or anything like that. I wanted to just start by saying, you've got these incredible things that happen to these people. Many of them are long gone now. Often the most astonishing thing that ever happened in their life. And they often were subject to ridicule or disbelief. But yet I think these things happened. And I just thought it's a terrible shame that we lose this. It's not just an important thing in the history of UFOs. And when you really get down to it, it's potentially an extremely important thing in the history of planet Earth. I mean, look, you have an advanced human society here. We're doing our thing. And yet there seems to be someone else checking us out and engaging with the bodies of water on this planet. How is that not a monumental moment in the history of human civilization and the history of our Earth? So I didn't want that to be lost, and I wanted to make them as vivid and real and true as I knew how to do. That was my goal, and I needed something that had something to start with.
Sure,
so that's where I was coming from.
No, absolutely. It does get me thinking about the water getting sucked up. If to ask some of these witnesses, I know you say it's sucked up because that just seems like the most logical, but is that what it actually looked like, or could it be possible that the UFO was putting
Oh,
a
yes.
liquid into the
Well,
ocean? I find that fascinating just because it changes the whole idea of, if you start speculating, well, what were they doing there? Why are they taking
yes,
the
yes.
water out?
So off
So,
the top of my head, I can think of several cases where these objects were seen putting something into the water.
see,
In
that's
fact,
interesting.
many such cases. So
That's
one,
interesting.
yes, one was from Aguadilla, Puerto Rico in I think 1989. This is a really amazing case, in my opinion. And in this case, so Aguadilla, Puerto Rico is like a big rectangle in the Caribbean there.
Yeah.
So if you look at the north western corner, that's Aguadilla. Many people are aware that there was a very interesting video that was from Aguadilla from 2013.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that, by the way, that's part of volume 3. I've got that. I've already treated
Nice.
that case. But Aguadilla has more than just that video. Puerto Rico is basically the king of USOs, in my opinion. It's the biggest hotspot of any, especially the northern shore there, but also the east and west coast, very, very active. The southern coast, a little less so. But Aguadilla, in the northwest corner there, very active area. So in 1989, there's a fisherman who also happened to be a qualified scuba diver. So he's in his boat, and he's like 2 miles off the shore, I think. And he's got his scuba gear or his diving gear with him. So he's out on his boat, he's alone, and he sees this. This is daytime, by the way. So he sees this glow below the water, not far from his position. And he's curious about it, and he's like, what is that thing? So he gets his diving gear on, and he goes into the water to investigate it. And this is his story. He gets in under the water. He's able to see this is a flying saucer. This is a disc-shaped object under the water.
Wow.
And he gets close enough to it to touch it. And what he saw or felt, actually, was that on one side of the craft there was like there was these grates, like that's like a filtration system almost, and you could feel the water being sucked into the craft at this one part, and on the other side, he swam to the other side, and you could feel the pressure of the water coming out through that. It was almost as if it was filtering water through the craft in his estimation.
Yeah.
So that's a clear interaction, and I would say some kind of filtration of the water going on with this craft. So he starts getting a little nervous. Who can blame him? And he goes back to his boat, and that's the last that he saw of it. And it departed after that. But holy smokes! And then there's one other case I'll just mention, and I was just looking at this earlier this morning for whatever reason, from 1979, off the coast of Big Sur, California. So Southern California there. And this is, again, 1979. A man and a woman are at the beach. I think it was getting a bit dark, but visibility was good. And they see a black triangle not coming out of the water. I don't, God, I can't remember now. I get a lot of these cases mixed up.
Yeah.
But it was low over the water. And what was interesting about this is that they watched it drop 2 glowing balls into the water. And this is not the only time that I have these types of reports.
Yeah.
There are several of these where some kind of thing is dropped into the water by a craft. In this case, 2 glowing orangey types of things that go into the water. They're both like totally jazzed up. They're into this sighting. And the object then, the triangle just takes off really fast. And one of them, I think the guy, screams out to the craft, "Take me with you." But it was gone. And it left behind a kind of luminous trail that lasted for a couple of minutes after the fact, apparently.
Well,
And that was that.
interesting.
That was that.
That's
So what was this dropping into the water? Like,
Sure. Little orbs, something. Who knows, right? Yeah. It's always hard to. try to understand why in this field, why this thing is happening, or why this event, why this person, why this, whatever, across all of it. And that doesn't mean it's not true or not if you can't understand the why. But what else do we have but to ask those questions? You try
No,
to
exactly.
understand the situation, better. Because I think like that guy that was in Puerto Rico who's like, oh, I see a light under the wall, I'm going to put on the thing and go down there. I mean, I have a bazillion, like, why is that? Why right there? Why didn't the craft notice that he's there touching it? Maybe it didn't care, like a fish coming up to it, just like doesn't really care. And also, like, is it sitting on the ground floor or it's just floating in the middle, surrounded by water all the way around? Like, it's not perched on a rock. It's,
No. It was
you know,
under the water. It was shallow. It wasn't deep under the water. That's why he was able
yeah,
to see it. And it was just there. There's one other case I'll just
yeah.
off the top of my head from the Black Sea near Crimea in
Okay.
2001. So early 21st century case.
Yeah.
And this will be in my third volume as well.
Okay. I
I've
was
got
going
them
to
all written
say,
down. No,
yeah.
everything that I've mentioned here, if it hasn't yet been published in the first volume, it's coming out in the second or third. So this one, I forget her name. She was a woman who was a very accomplished swimmer. She liked to swim out in the into the Black Sea. She was kind of far out, apparently, but I guess that was okay with her. And she sees. I'm trying to remember the specifics. I think it had come out of the water. It was a somewhat elongated, saucer-shaped, silvery thing that comes directly out of the water. It's very low over the water, and she's in the water, her head sticking up over the water. That's it. And she's looking at this thing, and it's just her and this craft. And it's a beautiful craft. She described it as like silvery, kind of reflective. I mean, it was just a gorgeous piece of machinery or technology or whatever it was.
Sure.
And she started to get a little scared. She's like, who wouldn't be a little bit nervous? You're seeing this thing. And she later stated that she felt like this message come in from this thing. Essentially, it's cool. Don't worry. You're fine. We're not going to do anything to you. It was
like telepathically, right? Like
very telepathically.
yeah,
And it was
yeah,
like the way she described it, it was like a very chill kind of a message, as it were.
yeah,
Very kind of calm and low key and almost friendly. They were like, you're good.
yeah.
And that's her story. And like, you ask yourself, do I choose to believe this or not? Well, yes, I think, people do interview these folks. They, most of these people are not looking for notoriety or fame. It's very obvious when you read the account. They're not looking for money. They're not looking to get noticed. In fact, a lot of them don't want that because of the opposite reason. They were afraid of social stigma and things like this.
Sure, especially at that time, right? When she had this event, even though we've come a long way into 2025, that stigma still exists about it. When it comes down to like belief, I've definitely have my up and downs there, and I think I've kind of just come to. I'm tired of thinking about if I believe somebody or don't believe somebody, or do I believe this story or don't believe the story. I just take all the data in, and I just live in the land of I don't know. And I enjoy it either way, like I love hearing all the different stories, but it's almost impossible to be like, is this true or not based on such small little data points. And even if you were to say, well, why would they lie? This person, that's not enough for me to be like, that's alien. I get that point, and that definitely makes sense. But I don't know why we even need to go down the road of like we need to believe or not believe, because that's like the first choice we're supposed to make when an interview comes out of a whistleblower, when someone tells a story, an experience. I get them told all the time to me, and I just learned stop making that binary choice, Patrick, right? Like you have to either believe them or don't believe them. It's like, why do I have to say I believe it or don't believe it? I can't make an intelligent, informed a decision like that, so I just live in, again, the land of I don't know, and
I hear
I
ya.
take all this stuff in, and a preponderance of evidence like you've put together in a book, just volume 1, right, only up to 1969. I mean, something's clearly going on. Just don't know
Yeah.
what it is. So, like, let's say, for instance, the patterns you spoke about earlier. What are some of these main
Yeah.
patterns that you're seeing through all of this? Because that's
Yeah, let's do
interesting
that.
to me.
And by the way, I think your points are very well taken. I get that a lot. The late Stanton Friedman had a really good expression. He said, "I'm putting it in my gray box." It's like, I don't know if
Yeah,
it's true or if it's not true.
yeah,
And
exactly.
and
I
Stan
like
was
that.
good with that, and you're good with that, like being willing to accept a little bit of uncertainty because you're going to get that with this, and you do have to
Yeah,
do that.